If you want an oversized Android stereo but don't want to drop the $430 you have to on a Decida, you're definitely going to want to consider Pumpkin's 10.1-inch Android double-din stereo, which comes in under $300. A major weakness to a lot of Android stereos is audio performance, specifically the preamp outputs. But we're going to show you how adding an AudioControl LC2i will turn this Pumpkin into a complete beast. Stay tuned for the most in-depth benchmark testing we've done on a stereo, as well as performance testing with and without a line-out driver. Thank you to Pumpkin for partnering with us on this video. We'll put links in the bio to check out all of their stereos. Inside the box is a user manual, installation guide, warranty card, hardware, brackets, RCA preamp output harness with Bluetooth microphone inputs, USB harness with 2 video outputs and 1 camera input, wiring harness which features steering wheel control keys and connects to a Metro 711784 aftermarket harness. USB harness with RCA AV inputs. External Bluetooth microphone. GPS antenna. And finally, the 10.1-inch double-din Android stereo. The rear connections on the unit include GPS antenna, Wi-Fi antenna, a whole slew of inputs for all the included and optional harnesses, and wiring harness for power ground and speaker. Initial boot time was pretty average. But the stereo has an incredibly fast and immediate warm boot time. By warm boot, I mean that the stereo has already been wired up and turned on before. This warm boot will simulate what the rest of your boot ups will look like. The similarities between this Pumpkin and the Decida that we reviewed are evident in their overall design and displays. This display features a ball joint, allowing mobility of the display up and down, left and right, and rotation. It operates on the same clip system to release the display from the ball joint. However, this should only be done during installation and is not meant to be a modular unit. I don't recommend removing the display too often. It's not meant to be constantly removed and reinstalled, and you could wear on the plug. The actual chassis is the same as any aftermarket double-din stereo. Some quick cons. I had a few minor issues with this Pumpkin. First, connecting to the stereo with my iPhone's hotspot took a few attempts before the stereo took to it. Then we realized the included antenna had a defect, which was causing the weak signal. In order to get Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you will need to purchase the NA7006B AutoPlay dongle. Getting the programs to work led to more struggles. Pumpkin was a little unclear as to what needed to be downloaded. In order to use the dongle with the stereo, you need to download the correct APK program file online, transfer it to a USB thumb drive, then download it onto the stereo. The issue I had was I couldn't find the correct autoplay APK file that they mentioned in their manual. I tried a few versions with no luck and kept getting error messages. We had to contact Pumpkin directly, and eventually they sent us the correct APK file, which was called Autocast, not Autoplay like they say in the manual. Hopefully they will address this in their manual. I'll put a link to the correct Autocast APK file below. Apple CarPlay worked fine and looked great, but Android Auto's graphics were a little pixelated. I would have loved to see an HDMI input on this head unit, but I guess they're thinking about the rear seat passengers more than the front seat with the 2 video outputs. As with all Android receivers, the audio signal is their biggest weakness. The RCA preamp outputs are very weak. We'll get into that more during our testing. You're better off using the internal speaker level amplifier and powering your speakers directly or wiring them to a line output converter. More on that later. Once all of the included harnesses and everything is plugged into the back, there's a lot going on and one could see issues tucking everything into the dash neatly, especially if you purchase other expandability options. The Pumpkin's massive 10.1-inch display is one of the best features of the stereo. It has a capacitive touchscreen similar to a smartphone and offers pinch to zoom controls. Pinch to zoom does not work in CarPlay or Android Auto maps, just on apps downloaded onto the stereo's actual hard drive. The not quite HD screen only has a resolution of 1024 by 600, but it still looks really good. And it plays back 1080p HD video files, obviously not displaying them in 1080p HD, but it's still 600p HD. They did opt for a wider screen than a typical double-din like many newer vehicles have nowadays. As I always mention in Android stereo videos, don't think of this as just a stereo. Think of it like an Android tablet with some car stereo features. This stereo supports 3G internet and Wi-Fi. Use the Pumpkin to its full potential by connecting it to a Wi-Fi source. Either use your vehicle's Wi-Fi if you have it, or simply use your phone as a personal hotspot. The stereo's settings control the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity, or get the external 3G dongle. You can access the Google Play Store and download whatever you want. I was able to easily download Instagram and Netflix. Once connected, you can literally download any app you want. Google, Chrome, Google Maps, and a few other apps are already pre-downloaded. Surf the web for whatever you want. YouTube works fantastic. Check out QMV's latest videos. Be aware, you'll be using your phone's data for all web and app usage with the hotspot connection. The stereo does not have built-in navigation, but feel free to download any navigation app you want or use CarPlay and Android Auto. This Android 10 model features a quad-core CPU processor with 2 GB of DDR3 RAM and 16 GB of internal storage. This is refreshing to see. What are the rest of you guys hiding out there? But let's benchmark this processor using Geekbench 5, Antutu Benchmark, and 3D Mark and see what results we get. First, 3D Mark. Unfortunately, we were unable to run the 3D Mark benchmark due to a hardware compatibility issue. Second, Antutu Benchmark, which did run, but when compared to our Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, it felt stuck in the mud to say the least. We ended with a result of 46,823 on the Pumpkin versus 106,165 for our Samsung S9 Plus. Our third and final CPU benchmark was Geekbench 5. We ran this and immediately noticed how slow it is. On our first run, we got a 61 single-core score and a 167 multi-core score. On the very same test, our Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus put up a 506 single-core score and a 2077 multi-core score. After these disappointing results, we hard reset the stereo, killed all background apps we could, and reran the test. On our second run with Geekbench, we got a 63 single-core score and a 200 multi-core score. And Tutu didn't fare much better on our second run. The radio posted a 47,071. These benchmarks on an Android-based car receiver don't really mean too much because what we need is a snappy, responsive interface and the ability to play music, which Pumpkin does very well. The stereo features an NXP TEF6686 radio chip for high-performance station pickup, as well as 18 FM and 12 AM presets. This Pumpkin is also DAB Plus digital radio ready with the Pumpkin DAB Plus box NA7001B. Bluetooth 4.4 offers hands-free calling as well as wireless music streaming. The one thing I don't like about this is Bluetooth music doesn't have its own source. You have to go into the Bluetooth source and then enter the music section. The unit has two USB inputs. Both work for USB thumb drives and with the Autocast dongle for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Smartphones will not play back music on either USBs as a source, but it will charge your device. For audio, it plays back MP3 and WMA files. And for videos, it plays back MP4 and again can handle 1080p HD files and also JPEG images. The Pumpkin features OBD2 expandability with torque for real-time data and car information. It also features several customization options starting with audio. Pumpkin gives you several boot logos to choose from. Upload a custom wallpaper. Adjust the backlight as well as the key color. When setting the illumination color of the keys, make sure you connect the illumination wire on the harness, so don't miss that during installation. Otherwise, the buttons will not illuminate. Set the steering wheel control commands. Review the stereo's internal storage situation and view all apps. As you can tell, there's a lot going on in this stereo. You kind of just gotta spend some time playing around with it. Just like on a tablet or smartphone, you can exit the apps. Press the rectangle icon on the top and swipe left. Swipe down to show essential information like Wi-Fi and notifications. The home screen features source and icon customization like on a smartphone, giving you the ability to move apps around to different locations, as well as control over the widgets. This way you can drag and drop your most used sources like Autocast and Google Search to the main home screen. The Pumpkin features Android smartphone mirroring via USB cable and AirPlay for iPhone via Wi-Fi connection, or use our smartphone mirroring adapters like the HDMI V2, which will plug directly into the RCA AV inputs of the stereo. Used in combination with the Lightning Digital AV adapter for iPhone or BUC HDMI 6 for Android. Links in the bio for those. Alright, time to test this pumpkin out, and you'll quickly see how this falls into the same truisms of other similar Android stereos. The first test we ran was 2 channels driven at 4 ohms, 14.4 volts, 1 kHz, EQ flat. Our audio precision will generate our signal and measure distortion. At volume 28, our HP8903B audio analyzer picked up 18.06 watts RMS. The audio precision read 1.02% distortion and 8.43 volts of output. We can switch between left and right channels and see the differences. Our AMM1 read 13 watts. We got 8.45 volts on the Lumi, and we drew 4.58 amps of current. Down to 40 Hz, at volume 28, our HP picked up 17.02 watts RMS, 1% distortion, and 8.18 volts of output. Channel swap. Our AMM1 read 14 watts RMS. We got 8.2 volts on the Lumi, and we drew 4.64 amps of current. Next, we tested the RCA preamp outputs, which were pretty bad. At both 40 Hz and 1 kHz, the most we could get with a flat EQ was about 750 millivolts. And then jacking the EQ all the way up, we still couldn't even get 1 volt of output. Not only could we not get 1 volt, there seemed to be 2 issues with the outputs. First, the right channel has noticeably lower distortion than the right. Second, during our tests with the EQ flat and maxed out, we found an output rollback. For example, when running at 64 Hz, the voltage would gradually rise with each increased step in volume. So volume 21, we got 657 millivolts. Then at volume 22, the voltage increased to 737 millivolts. Then when we advanced to volume 23, the voltage suddenly dropped to 662 millivolts, then gradually increased in a normal ratio. We confirmed this behavior with a maxed EQ, flat EQ, and several tones, 40 Hz, 64 Hz, and 1000 Hz frequencies, as well as via auxiliary input and USB playback. These poor performing RCAs are not ideal for connecting amplifiers. We need more output voltage to keep noise at bay, and the perfect solution is an AudioControl LC2i. So what we did next was wire up an AudioControl LC2i line driver to the speaker outputs of the stereo, and man, this thing blew us away. With the LCI2, we got a lot of juice out of the preamp outputs. At full volume, our waveform was pretty choppy, but at 64 Hz, volume 27, we picked up 9.03 volts of output on the HP, and 8.93 volts of output on the audio precision, with 0.089% distortion. At 1 kHz, we dropped a little to 8.6 volts on the HP, and 8.51 volts on the audio precision, with 0.06% distortion. At 40 Hz, we picked up 9 volts on the HP, 8.91 volts on the audio analyzer, and 0.14% distortion. We also tried to add an external DAC to improve the audio quality. It would recognize it as a headphone device, but would not output any audio. We tried all major audio streaming apps in the USB and the USB, but were unsuccessful. Our final test was on frequency response. We used our audio precision to run up each frequency. Basically, you don't want to use the preamp outputs of this stereo for your system. You're much better off using the speaker level outputs with RCAs or a line output converter to convert those high level outputs into powerful low level outputs to connect to an amplifier. The internal amp exhibits lower distortion with considerably more outputs. Besides that, this stereo is absolutely worth its cost in my opinion. It's packed with features that benefit both iPhone and Android users. The display is great and the operating system is modern and fast. Stay tuned in a few weeks when we install an Android stereo inside my own car. Until then, be sure to get all of your car audio and video gear with us today at qualitymobilevideo.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new. Click that like button, join the conversation below, and thanks for watching.